it's actually funny because Eddie put so much work into planning these events, and at the last event at DevCon, I told Eddie, I really want to give a talk, so please make sure I have time to have the talk. And then on the actual day, I realized that, you know, with the energy and the crowd, it just wasn't necessary. So I didn't give the talk, and I said, sorry, Eddie, I'm not going to give the talk. And then today, I think probably 6 months ago, when we were planning the agenda for the Liferay Symposium, I probably told Eddie, you know, I give so many talks, it'd be really nice if I didn't have to give a talk at the end of the Liferay Symposium. So probably he made the agenda where I don't have a talk. And yet, you know, today I thought, well, I'd really like to share some of the stories that I have so that you can see what Liferay is doing. So anyway, apologies to Eddie for all the craziness, but we like to be agile here at Liferay, so I hope you understand. How many of you, this is your first Liferay Symposium? Okay, great. So, for those of you who have been part of the Liferay community for a long time, some of this may be very familiar, but I do have some new stories to share with you. And for those of you, this is the first time being a Liferay Symposium, this is very important to understand what kind of company Liferay is, what we're about, and what our vision is. Okay. So, Liferay, we started this company 10 years ago, and the founders of the company really wanted to make the most impact with their lives. We were in our mid-20s, very idealistic, and we wanted to make a difference with our lives, right? And I would say that our vision as a company has evolved over time, but I would sort of separate it into three main things that we want to do. We want to have a successful business, we want to have great technology, and we want to use our time and resources to impact communities by volunteering and doing nonprofit work. We see a lot of these elements coming together in this diagram. So in the blue circle you have for-profit, which is the Liferay business. In the red you have the nonprofit Liferay Foundation, as well as some of the sort of policies of Liferay Inc. To support nonprofit work. And we see these two pillars supporting local communities throughout the world, whether it's in Los Angeles, whether it's here in Italy, whether it's in and among our offices throughout Europe, Asia, and everywhere else. We, as founders, we started off here on the left circle, which is more of the nonprofit side. I think we felt, I personally felt, oh, I should go, you know, work for an NGO or an NPO. I should, you know, give my life in this way to help poor people somehow. And what I realized through that journey and process was that in order to do that, you have to have money. And a lot of nonprofit people that I talked to said, you know, we spend so much of our time asking people for money that sometimes it seems like we don't actually get to impact people. There are all sorts of other problems with nonprofit work, or challenges, I would say, but all of these things ultimately led me and Bryan and the other founders to say, let's try to start a business. So how do we actually do this? The vision sounds great, but in practical terms, how does it work out? On the business side, what we try to do is use the business and make decisions that will transform communities. The best example of this right now is in Hamilton, Ohio, which used to be a huge manufacturing town in the middle of the United States. In the 1800s, they were a thriving community. They had a lot of manufacturing, a lot of paper mills, and a lot of that was because they were right on the river. So here's this river, and then there's a town right on the river. Much like most major cities here in Italy, it's by a body of water. And when the interstate system in America was created, the highway system, Hamilton said, we don't want that big concrete thing running through our town. It's so ugly and we don't need it because we have the river. And obviously, as the 20th century developed, that became a big liability for them, as well as the fact that a lot of the manufacturing businesses in the US you know, suffered a lot with the opening up of trade with China and all this stuff, right? So various factors led to people like this man losing his job and companies getting shut down. So what do we do? I think it was about 3 or 4 years ago. Josh Asbury, who's our Director of Sales in North America, he had been part of the Liferay community. He had become part of our sales team and then kind of risen up the ranks to become our Director of Sales. And he was working at home, along with some of our other sales team members who live around the community. And they said, you know what, I think it's time to open an office. And of course there's a business reason for doing that, which is when you work together in a room, it's actually, you get a lot more work done, you can be more effective, you can build relationships, but also it will help and support downtown Hamilton. And this is a photo of some of the buildings in downtown, which were really, really run down, but there were some investors and some developers who wanted to revitalize the community, and so they actually invested in refurbishing these buildings. This is the building where Liferay actually now has their offices. It's a historic building. They've put a lot of money into it, and the city of Hamilton actually worked with Liferay to give us some help in starting the office and things like that. So by deciding to be in Hamilton, we invested in this building, we built out the interior, and now we actually have a pretty good sales team there. It's about 15 people. Occasionally we'll fly people in from other Liferay offices to have meetings there. And I wouldn't say that we have such a huge impact. Like, if that paper mill had 100 jobs and we only created 15, it's not a big deal. But at the same time, we're doing our little part to help. One of the tangible ways of doing that is by supporting local businesses. So in a very natural way, after a long day of selling Liferay and all that, the team will often go out to a local pub, support the local businesses. So that's one thing we want to do as Liferay. By being here in Rome, by having conferences and events here, we want to spend money in this city. We want to generate tax revenue and all that stuff, right? Okay, the second part, which most of you are very familiar with, is sharing the benefits of technology. One of the first questions that most people ask when you say you're an open source business is they say, how do you make money? And some of you still wonder that, right? Because maybe you're using Community Edition and you haven't seen the pictures of Eddie's kids, and so you don't feel that you should buy Enterprise Edition. This is kind of a very simple model for understanding how Liferay's business works. Anytime you have a commodity that is reduced in price and increased in usage, then the complementary services to that commodity increase in value. So an example of that would be, if, let's say this weekend, Alitalia had a big sale for flights to Sardinia, and the weather was great, and so many people decided to take a last-minute trip to the island, then all of a sudden the cost of the hotels would go up, right? Very simple. And so at Liferay, we decided that we wanted to make our software as widely used as possible. If you remember in my opening, I talked about Heron Low, the nonprofit for disabled people, and how they're able to use Liferay to provide an internet for people. And we think that's great. So as many people as possible are using the software, but what that means is that the fact that we're the ones who created the software and are the experts becomes more and more valuable. Another way to look at it is through this ecosystem diagram. So at the core of what we do is the Liferay software, but software by itself can only do so much. You still need support and maintenance, you still want modules and add-ons, and as many of you know, many people want to customize the Liferay platform. And so I see this as a gradient of monetization. What I mean by that is, across this ecosystem of services, you can choose where you want to make your money. As SIs, some of you make your money at the very last circle. As the vendor, Liferay could choose to make the money in the software, as demonstrated here. The challenge with this model, of course, is that unless people actually buy your software, then all of these other monetization areas are not really valid. And so we took the opposite approach and we said, let's give away the software, and that will make everything else valuable. Now, on my graph, I mentioned that usage is very important. And very fortunately for Liferay, we've had a lot of people using our software. We have a great community of which you are a very important part, and we're very thankful to you for that. You've heard throughout the conference about things like Alloy Editor, Senna.js. You may have heard about web components, which is a thing that Zeno, one of our engineers, is working on. These are all technical initiatives that we're trying to just share with the world so that our technology will result in better websites, better experiences, and hopefully improve the lives of the people who use it. The marketplace. You've heard a lot about marketplace, and most people might think that we're simply just trying to be like Apple and Google, which is to some degree true. Anytime you have a platform, you want to have third-party developers make that platform more useful. But the other big reason why we wanted to do the marketplace was because we wanted independent, third-party developers of Liferay to be able to monetize the investment that they've made in Liferay and their knowledge by selling software modules to the Liferay ecosystem. This guy, his name is Sebastian, he's based in France. He's built about 5 marketplace apps, and he even won one of the marketplace contests for his apps. And we love the fact that he's been able to reach a much wider audience with his skills and his services than he would have otherwise. So this is very much at the core of what we want to do as Liferay. I hope that many more of you will participate in and benefit from the marketplace. Okay, the last thing. So we talked about business, we talked about technology. I mentioned in the beginning that I realized in my 20s that making an impact on the world oftentimes is best done through business. But there are still many things that you can't do on a for-profit basis. As much as possible, we want to empower people and help people help themselves. But sometimes people just need a little bit of help. And so we've designed our company in a way that we can do that. Every year, 10% of Liferay's profits are set aside, and we either donate it directly to a nonprofit, or we donate it to the Liferay Foundation so that we can save up a fund that we can use for large transformative initiatives in the future. One of the communities that has been very dear to my heart has been Northeast Japan. You've heard me talk about this last year as well. We have continued to send teams as part of our employee volunteer program to Northeast Japan in response to the tsunami and earthquake and the nuclear disaster that happened in 2011. We have sent funds that we donated from Liferay Foundation, as well as that we've had raised from the Liferay community to support this community in Northeast Japan as well. I wanted to bring this up again just to have another perspective of what we can do to continue to help, which is neither a business or a technology thing. And it's simply this. When the mayor of a town in the Northeast was asked what people could do to help, he said, you should just come and visit us. We actually, of course, appreciate your money and we appreciate you donating things to us, but another important thing you can do is just spend time with us. See how we live, see what our issues are, and then just show that you still remember us. In 2014, the news competes for our attention, and many of us maybe have forgotten about the situation there, but it's still going to be a problem for a very long time. So if you're planning your next vacation and you've never been to Japan, you might actually consider going to Northeast Japan. In this particular area, there's no radiation danger, and the people are really, really nice. The food is really, really good. When we went, we did some cleanup stuff, but you don't even have to do that because I think most of it is now cleaned up. Some of our teams have just been spending time with the elderly and with the kids just to show that we care and to help with some of the post-trauma stuff that goes on. It's a beautiful part of the world. When I went to this area, we went to Liferay Symposium, which is a World Heritage Site. It looks the way you would expect Japan to look. Very, very beautiful. We ate all sorts of good food, like this sea urchin and this grilled fish. And we saw and met a lot of cool people, a lot of young people. We got to really enjoy the city and community. So, if you're wondering, what can I do to help? It's very simple, just go and visit. I wanted to also share a story with you that came out of Brazil this year. This school is a public school in Brazil. And in Brazil, when I talk to my coworkers, they say that most people who are in the middle class send their kids to private schools because the public schools are very underfunded and the education is not very good. And so one of our employees actually went to this school. He went to public school, and even though he came from a poorer background, one day someone showed him some software code, and he was so fascinated by that. And basically the doors of his mind were open, and he had this new world that he was able to explore. And because software programming has made such an impact on his life, he actually has wanted to give back. And so he goes to this school on a regular basis to spend time with the kids and teach them stuff. So these are just some photos. You can see in the top left, that's Javier. He's one of our employees. And using our EVP program, he had a couple of our employees visit the school during their Science and Technology Week and just talk to the kids about programming, talk to them about, the fact that there are companies like Liferay out there that they can work at if they continue to study math and science and computers. Let's see, just some more photos here. This is a photo of our Brazil team. And I think this is a good example of what these kids maybe don't realize. I think for us, it's very typical for a young software company, to have fun, to, have parties at the office, to have, aliens show up at the office. But for the kids, they think, oh, I have to, be a fruit vendor, or I have to do some bad things in order to make a living. So just by being there and being part of their community, we're able to change their minds about what's possible. Okay, one last community that we're making an impact in, and for that I wanted to share another video. This is a community in South Los Angeles, and Liferay has been supporting them with donations, with some volunteer work, but really the heroes and the stars of this community are the people who are living there themselves.
My name is Marcos Gomez, and I'm the Executive Director of Ministry for the West Coast region for World Impact. I find myself to be really passionate about, really are connected to urban poverty. The way that I grew up, it was through the love of people that helped change my life, and a way of giving back is first by living in the community, and second by being intentional to develop relationships. One of the stories that come to my mind as it connects to World Impact's mission, band of brothers. And these were urban pastors, urban leaders, people who are in recovery, home programs, who've been clean for some time. Really, it was a time to encourage all of these urban men where they can come together and share their struggles, share their joys. I've seen Liferay donating computers, really make a difference in the lives of inner city teens, to help them in their after school work, tutoring, and then also for those kids that maybe wanted to develop a skill set, print media and videography and some of these things. Here's to another X amount of years, 10 years, whatever that would be, of building our relationship in deeper ways.
Okay, so, oh, I've got a couple more. Let's see. Okay, so I don't know if you ever saw the movie in the 90s called Boys in the Hood. This was a Hollywood movie. It was about the Crips and the Bloods. So that neighborhood where World Impact operates is actually where that movie kind of took place. And if you remember the story, it's about a young man who moves into this neighborhood and all of the different challenges he faces as he's surrounded by this world of gangs and drugs and violence. And so World Impact is one organization that's trying to have better outcomes for these kids, by being present in the community, and again, by Liferay sending people to come in on a regular basis to spend time with these kids, we're able to change their horizons on what's possible for their lives. These are just some of the kids that we've worked with. This was from a computer workshop that some of our LA employees put together. Okay, so this vision we have for business technology and volunteerism, how are we able to do this? It's really been two major things, I think, that have helped us to maintain this kind of a company for the last 10 years. One is the very important point of financial independence. I mentioned this slide before in the morning, but this was really important to us to not have outside investors so that we can continue building this kind of company. But because we didn't have funding, we had to make certain sacrifices as Liferay. I'll share a couple stories from the beginning of Liferay's start as a company. I don't think I've ever shared this in Italy. So back in 2005, we only had 2 customers, and we were doing professional services for them. And you know, they were companies that had a lot of money, and because we were consultants, they gave us an allowance for travel, so for covering hotels and for airfare. And because our first employees were dumb and young, they, for some reason, agreed to not live in a nice hotel at all near the client, but they actually lived in this really bad neighborhood called Gardena, which was about 20 minutes away from the client. And because the rent was so cheap, we were actually able to use the housing allowance to build up in our savings in order to build the company. Just to give you an idea of what kind of neighborhood this was, one night some of our guys were coming home from doing the work, and I think they were driving like a white Honda Civic or something like that. And they noticed that there was this bright light shining on them as they were driving home. And it turned out that there was, I think, some kind of like suspected murderer or someone who was also driving a white Honda Civic. And he was driving around in LA, fleeing from the police in this neighborhood. And so the helicopter thought that our guys were this guy, and they were following him around. They were freaked out of their minds, and then finally they realized that they had the wrong car, and then they left. But you know, it was that kind of neighborhood, and the sacrifices that were made really were by a lot of our early employees, key guys. Actually, Cheung, who's here in the audience today, he was one of the guys who dealt with a lot of this stuff. So we really have Joe and a lot of the others to thank for the fact that we're successful as a company. Another thing we did in the early days, so this was, I think you've heard Marco say that we used to be in a church. It wasn't a big church like the ones you have here in Europe. It was just it's just a building like this, right? This was our early office. This is actually after we invested in some IKEA furniture. And as we were growing bigger and bigger, we needed more and more space, but we couldn't afford to pay rent to get more space. And so what we did essentially was to make more space. Using very simple physics, we realized that there was all of this wasted space that we could make better use of. And so we replaced these bigger tables with the smaller tables. Another set of photos from the early days. I actually think that I don't know if that's Mike or Joe, there on the right, but after the Gardena apartment, we actually moved to a nicer apartment in an area called West LA. It was much more, safe and nice there. But there were still some sacrifices to make, and so you'll notice that they had these work desks here at the bottom, and so they would do their work in the morning down here, and then at night they would just go upstairs to sleep. So this is the sort of thing that financial independence cost us, but on the other hand, that means that we've been able to continue to build Liferay the way that we want to. Okay, I want to close by just sharing some of the culture and values that Liferay has. I want to start by sharing this funny video with you. So that was Bruno Pinheiro. He's part of the Brazil office, and as you know, Brazilians have a reputation. This was at our Brazil Symposium that we had just last week, I think. Last week I was in Brazil, and we had about 220 people gathered for a Liferay conference there. At Liferay, we care very, very much about our culture. This is a photo from one of our early retreats. You can see that's me in the bottom left, very fashionably dressed. We have never really, I think one of the nice things about our early retreats was that they were really, really simple. They weren't so much about like anything fancy, but it was just all of us getting together and having a good time. And I think that still characterizes Liferay today. We really enjoy spending time together. A lot of times, I mean, I've hung out with Olaf in like, I think 10 different cities across Europe and the US, and that's part of what just makes this so enjoyable. And so one of the things I tell all of my offices is when we hire at Liferay, we're checking for character, who the person is, chemistry, whether we get along, and then the competence. And so even if you're the hotshot, best JavaScript developer out there, if you don't get along with Liferay, and if you're not the type of person to do the right thing, we won't hire you. We have a very international culture. So this photo, very much Eddie and Ruth, who are part of our team here in Germany. But right next to them is Cindy Wang. She's the GM of our China office, and they're having some donuts in LA. And again, this is, after a long day of meetings about sales and marketing, they still want to hang out. This is like 11 p.m. They're cruising around for donuts. You may know that I personally spent about 3.5 years in Frankfurt. This is an old photo where we were celebrating Jenny's birthday together in the office. And again, this culture of sharing life together has been a very, very strong part of what we're about here at Liferay. One more photo from Brazil. So, I want to close with one last video to highlight a trip I recently took to China. Now I have one more thing to say.
We were going forward with only one purpose of helping those kids and try to help them and help them.
All my life, I remember the orphanage.
You won't have time to think about what you're going to do when you walk in the house. Because before you can even think, there's going to be a kid running up to you, grabbing onto your leg, or jumping onto you and just wanting you to hold them.
It really blew my mind when I could see the kids. Just different kinds of special needs. Kids with autism in wheelchairs, some with cerebral palsy. But the main thing, none of that really mattered. It was just more the smiles that each of these kids had.
Sometimes they are even more happy than us. They still live with hope. The kids here are very beautiful and smart. They are really, really smart. Some of them can talk with us and share their stories.
And just to see how joyful these kids here, it's pretty amazing. It's also been really encouraging to see the co-workers just playing with the kids and really having fun with them. So it's been a really good time also bonding with co-workers and colleagues.
And there's kids who are getting adopted who are even well into their 8, 10 years old. They're much older kids, and families are their hearts melt when they see their faces and they hear their stories, and they're adopting these kids, which is great.
A lot of people were sharing, they're so moved by the kids, or so moved by the relationship that we had with the kids. They were crying and they were sharing a lot of good stories. Kids were so happy to have someone to be there and help them and play with them. So I think from this perspective, they were growing personally, and I think it's quite a good thing that they understand deeper in their lives.
This was just an amazing trip for me personally and for the team. And I think one of the things that we struggled with was, are we really making a difference? We went to this orphanage for about a week. We spent time playing with the kids. We would just pick them up. We would take them on the bicycle, things like that. But at the end of the week, they're still disabled. They're still orphans. They still want families. And so maybe you're tempted to think, well, what's the point? Why should we do it at all? And yet, I truly believe that if you make a difference in their lives for that 1 week, it's actually totally worth it. They will remember that. And I just want to connect that back to you because some of you have talked to me and said, it's really great what Liferay has done. So proud of your company. You're doing great work. Good job with what you've done. However, I'm just a small guy and I'm not able to do any of that. So I just want to see from a distance that you're doing all these great things. And I want to actually turn that around and say, it's because of decisions that you've made. It's because you've invested in Liferay that we've been able to do anything at all. There are a lot of big problems in the world. There are a lot of big challenges. And many of us feel very powerless to do anything about it. But I think we have to try. We have to start. We have to, at least for that 1 day or that 1 week, or even that 1 year, decide to try to make a difference. And I believe that you've all done that by investing in Liferay, by choosing open source, by sharing your skills and technology with the world. We've been doing this for 10 years, and it's been an amazing 10 years. However, I don't know how much longer it's going to last. I don't know if Liferay will go out of business next year, or maybe suddenly the founders will say, we're too tired, we can't do it anymore, we're going to sell the company. Who knows, right? But I truly believe that even if this was the end, even if this was my last talk, even if this was the last symposium, it'd be totally worth it because we've actually made a difference. And so I just want to say thank you from the bottom of my heart. You have been such a joy to be a part of this Liferay community together, and it is so much of who you are and what you've done that allows me to stand up in front of you here today and share these stories. So please continue in what you're doing, and I hope that we'll have many, many more stories to share together in the years to come. Thank you very much.